We are coming on the air live from Atlanta now, where the stage and the spin room is set for what may be the most watched moment of this election season yet. And we've got it covered from every angle. As both President Biden has arrived in Atlanta, former President Trump is on his way here for a key moment set to go face to face, but certainly not eye to eye, with sharp policy differences on the issues Americans care about, like immigration, abortion, the economy. Then, in our breakdown tonight, we're taking a look at some of history's most notable debate night make-or-break viral moments. Also tonight, more bombshell rulings from the Supreme Court after that mistaken abortion posting. The court blocking a ruling against Purdue Pharma that could threaten billions of dollars for victims. Then, a mystery straight out of Hollywood. The Chicago woman now missing from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. And the bad news just keeps coming for Boeing. What the NTSB says they did now, that's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we are coming to you live from Atlanta. This is the spin room, right? This is not where the action happens tonight. That's actually a little bit further away on the debate stage itself. But this is where, after those critical 90 minutes, I'm going to sneak around our friends right here, you are going to see surrogates coming out, trying to convince members of the media, members of the public, why their candidate did a better job, why they're the ones who should end up in the White House. Just to give you a sense of the landscape here, members of the media will be watching from this arena. Up here, narrating, talking, and analyzing these critical moments here, these 90 minutes for President Biden and former President Trump. We're going to walk you up to our set right now, live here, as we go through what we can expect to see. Some really key moments here, and we're thinking about it in a couple of different buckets. First of all, the policy issues and the power of political theater here. Will President Biden bring the energy that many voters feel he lacks and shut down claims he's too old for another term? Which former President Trump might we see? The out-of-the-gate insult-throwing brawler or a more restrained, policy-focused candidate? One of his allies tells me that he may, in fact, try to be more disciplined. President Biden is going to have some tough questions to answer on the two issues we know voters care a lot about: an economy that looks good on paper, but people aren't really feeling great about it, and then, of course, the immigration crisis at the southern border. Former President Trump will also likely be forced to talk abortion, back in the spotlight today following the Supreme Court decision earlier. And how will he respond when his status as a convicted felon is brought up? And maybe most importantly, who will emerge with maybe the clippable, tweetable, Instagrammable moment that could live on through Election Day and beyond? We've got plenty of team coverage here. Vanity Fair special correspondent Brian Stelter is with us, and here with me in Atlanta, our experts on the beats, NBC's Gabe Gutierrez and Vaughn Hilliard, who is joining us as well. So, gentlemen, here we are in the spin room. We are hours away. We know President Biden is here. He did some handshaking, right, Gabe, before he settled in to get ready for what's going to happen at 9 o'clock Eastern. You can watch it right here on NBC. You've also got former President Trump on his way, Vaughn. Talk to us about what you're hearing from sources on strategy and tactics tonight.
Two very different strategies. Number one, for Donald Trump, look, he did this in 2016. He did this in 2020. He did it the more formal way. He had mock debate performances, which he had somebody do a stand-in, in which they went back and forth over questions. This time around, at least his campaign says he's not doing that. Donald Trump himself this week saying that he's been preparing his whole life for this, and he doesn't need to go to a room for 2 days or a week or 2 weeks for this moment. Instead, getting on that plane here today, he's got some top senior advisors, some family members that are with him. It's not clear whether his wife Melania Trump is with him or not, but one senior advisor telling us that he is relaxed and confident. They're having some brush up here before he gets here to Atlanta for this 9 p.m. Eastern debate here. But for Donald Trump, he said that it's all in his head and that he's been preparing for this. I just want to say, though, over the course of the last 4 years, Donald Trump, right, he didn't take part in any of those Republican debates, primary debates. He's only done 2 mainstream TV interviews. So Donald Trump really hasn't had to go toe-to-toe or face many hard questions. Tonight in those 90 minutes, it could be different coming directly from the current president.
And to be clear here, a different style of prep, or whatever you're calling prep, doesn't mean actually no prep at all, right? And we know that President Biden has a more traditional, formal structured game.
And look, the Biden campaign, Vaughn, they're skeptical that he had no prep. They say, look, he hasn't had a campaign event since the weekend. Yes, he's called in, to a couple of small campaign events, but they believe that he really has been prepping with his informal advisors. Now, Hallie, you hit the nail right on the head. President Biden has been for several days at Camp David. He's more traditional. He wants to come in here prepared. You mentioned that the video of him shaking hands right there. And that is classic Biden, right? You know, he's speaking with voters here in Atlanta. This was just a couple hours after he landed. And this is the type of retail politicking that President Biden excels at. And his campaign feels that if he does that right before the debate, he could be fired up coming in here, really trying to get his message across.
So, Brian, let me bring you into the conversation here, because I'll tell you, the way that I've been thinking about this and talking about this with our team is in a couple of different buckets. And you know I love a bucket, but it's the policy piece of it, right? The actual issues, like the economy, immigration, abortion access, the legal issues that Mr. Trump faces, and his felony conviction. But then there is something that is also important in these moments, and that is the power of political theater in so many ways. And the rules tonight are going to make that feel different than we've ever seen a debate go down in modern history. Because not only is this a current president versus a former president, there's no live audience. Mics will be muted unless it's their turn to speak. They're not going to be able to talk to staffers during breaks. Talk us through how that could play into what the audience at home sees, with maybe tens of millions of people tuning in.
Yes, that's right. And I think tens of millions of people will be tuning in. The last time that these two men met, 70, 80 million viewers watched. We were in the throes of a horrific pandemic. Now we are out of it, but our politics isn't scrambled by the pandemic, and we're back with these two men back on stage. Because the rules are different, it's going to feel like a very different broadcast. Not having a studio audience will make a big difference. Yeah. Donald Trump usually performs in front of thousands of people at rallies. He won't be doing that tonight. I've been talking with executives at my former network, CNN. They are very interested in how this microphone situation plays out, because they are going to mute the mics when the candidate's not supposed to be speaking. But we don't know in practice how that's actually going to work. For all we know, Trump might try to interrupt Biden. Biden might be rattled by it. He might try to react to Trump. So even though there are going to be these microphone controls, we don't know how it's going to play out. And with that said, you can mute my mic now, Hallie.
I would never, Brian. It's interesting you say that. I spoke with Cedric Richmond, who, of course, is an advisor of the current president, President Biden, who, and I asked about this mic situation, he's like, hey, they're going to be 8 feet apart from each other. It's not as though Donald Trump may not try to interject if he so chooses, or vice versa. The two of them will be able to hear each other. The question is, how does that feel for somebody who is watching, whether it's you at home or whether it's us here in the spin room?
And there's been an argument today, by the way, between CNN and NBC and the other networks. The White House press corps saying we need to be in the room to hear these interruptions. We need to be able to see and hear it. CNN is saying no, they're not allowing outside journalists. So that's going to be a bit of a sidebar controversy. The point of that, though, is that CNN does not, the producers of this debate, they don't want you to be able to hear the interruptions. They're trying to create a forum where we can have an actual policy conversation. But how much do these candidates want to have that? Do they really want to talk about substance, or do they want to fight and bicker with each other? We're going to find out in a few hours.
What's been interesting in talking to Gabe, and I know you have been, obviously, Biden advisors, they're concerned about the fact check piece of this. They know that President Richmond said to me, you know, Congressman Richmond, you know, Donald Trump, he says, will lie.
That's right.
He's going to lie in every sentence that comes out of his mouth, is what he said. And President Biden is not going to be fact-checking every single line, right? And that's a concern on the Biden side.
You know, Hallie, and that question of live fact-checking, that's going to come up tonight, because earlier in the week, you know, a CNN executive was quoted as saying, oh, it's not really the role of the moderators to live fact-check.
Biden camp didn't like that.
Oh, no. That set off a lot of alarm bells in the Biden camp. And they say that, yes, no, it is the role of the moderators to call out what, you know, lies when they see it. Now, that'll be a major question, as Brian was saying, you know, how this plays out tonight. And with President Biden, yes, live fact-checking his opponent, but that may cut into the message that he's trying to get across. So how much time does he spend fact-checking? How much time does he actually spend talking about what he wants to talk about and the policy proposals?
On the flip side of that coin, I also had an opportunity to speak with Congressman Byron Donalds, who is an ally of former President Trump's. And he did something that may be a little bit risky. He predicted what he thinks Donald Trump will do tonight. I asked him, will he be more disciplined, do you think? And he said he will. And the congressman, who's obviously close to the former president, was on the VP shortlist. We think he's probably fallen off at this point now. We think the top 3 do not include him. Suggested that he believes that the former president understands what this moment is. And we've seen this before. Look back at 2020. That first debate, 100+ interruptions. The second debate, far fewer. Fun.
Donald Trump has vulnerabilities, right? Ever since he left the White House, 4 criminal indictments. Roe v. Wade was overturned. We know that a majority of Americans are for women's reproductive rights. And so, you know, there's a social media post even this morning in which it was almost in a way foreshadowing a potential response from Donald Trump today. In which a pivot. He tried to, like, turn something on its head. He said that, right, Joe Biden is against women, because of immigration and the border, right? Almost giving a signal of, right, I know I'm going to get attacked over the Dobbs decision and women's reproductive rights. But that's where he's already signaling he's going to try to use that, knowing that he has those vulnerabilities that are on the line tonight.
It's a great point. Also, I tried to sneak a bottle of water off camera. I'm sorry. I got busted. I'm exhausted from the walk through this gigantic spin room and needed to hydrate, Brian. The interesting piece to me here, too, on kind of the optics of it all, is the number of people who will be watching. You predicted tens of millions. That seems right, based on past precedent, based on where history is with some of these numbers. And when you look at the polling here, it's fascinating to me that something like 16% of Americans suggest that they could be persuadable tonight, depending on how these debate performances go. Let's be honest, 16% does not sound like a big number, but this is an election that will not be decided by big numbers, Brian. It could be significant.
Right. We imagine that everybody's made up their minds about Trump and Biden, that everybody made up their minds years ago. I think that's actually not true for the following reason. Trump has faded from the public's memory for several years. He was basically invisible after January 6th. And beyond that, Joe Biden's strategy has been to stay a little bit low-key compared to Trump in his 4 years in office. These candidates have not been in our collective faces, at least not until tonight. A lot of people are going to tune in for the first time tonight. It's going to be a turning point for the election for that reason. And so we are going to see, I think maybe there's a lot more people that are undecided or flexible than we might realize. And that stat about how many people are going to tune in, yes, tens of millions will watch live. Even more people are going to watch the clips later. I know my wife, for example, she's going to wake up in the morning, she's going to watch the best few minutes. That's how a lot of people are going to consume the debate.
She's got to get some sleep.
Well, yes, we got to keep that in mind, that those viral moments, they're going to matter a lot more than they did 4 or 8 years ago.
It's a super interesting point. Brian, thank you. Vaughn, Gabe, before I let you go, what is something that you haven't said on television yet that you think we should be thinking about, that you think folks should know about at home?
How much are folks actually going to hear about the future? This is a moment where both campaigns...
Isn't it all about the future, in theory?
In theory, but 4 years ago is an awful lot about the past, and the roles are reversed this time. And I think Donald Trump is eager to use 4 years of the Biden administration's record to his advantage here, and yet... Again, 4 criminal indictments, the January 6th Capitol attack. Yeah. These two men, that debate happened before, right? The Capitol attack here. And so this is going to be a moment, I think, when we go through those 90 minutes, how much is actually focused on what a second Trump or Biden administration would look like?
Yeah, and for me, look, how much of this is going to be policy, and as you have said earlier today, how much of it is going to be theatrics, and a specific question of how personal this gets. There's some part of this campaign that is going to be very personal. Talk about Hunter Biden. What happens if Donald Trump goes out and goes after President Biden's son? But he hasn't really, in some cases, when it comes to his addiction. What if he goes into his foreign business dealings and goes out down that rabbit hole? And is it at that point that President Biden comes back and fact checks? How is it that he thinks about his son there on stage in front of millions of people? So, this could get personal. It should be very interesting to see how those muted mics, how much that kind of focuses this debate really on policy and not so much on the theatrics. And also, I'm interested to see whether they shake hands at the beginning.
Well, that's another big moment, and that'll be like minute 2. We'll know the tone, at least for the first part of the evening. There's nobody I'd rather be watching it with. Vaughn, Gabe, I'll see you like all night long. Thank you for being on. I appreciate it. And obviously, of course, our thanks to Brian Stelter as well. We are going to have all of it tonight. The debate hosted by CNN will be right here on NBC News Now. We're simulcasting it. Our special coverage on the network begins at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Do not miss it. I will see you there. One of the things that we talked about that is going to come up almost certainly in this debate is the issue of abortion access, especially on the heels of that Idaho abortion decision by the Supreme Court and what it means for those who need care. Because here today, you now have the justices officially, essentially punting a case on emergency abortions in Idaho. And if this sounds familiar, if you're having some deja vu, well, that's because right on this show 24 hours ago, we told you about that copy of the decision that was posted online accidentally yesterday. Now, the ruling, again, official today, means that people in Idaho can get an abortion if their health is at serious risk, and that is at least a temporary decision. It doesn't necessarily stop any other state from putting in place a similar ban. And this is partly why Justice Jackson, in her dissent, said today is not a victory for pregnant patients, instead calling it simply a delay. Laura Jarrett is joining us now. Laura, we're glad to have you here because, listen, you have been talking about this particular case ever since it was accidentally posted, that copy, about 24 hours ago. But now here it is, right? It is the reality. It is the law of the land, at least in Idaho. The question is, what does this mean for the rest of the country, and where do we go next?
Yeah, it was one of your producers who actually flagged to me that it had been improperly posted and set off a chain of events, Hallie, funny enough. But the sort of ability to do nothing in this case and to punt on the issue and to kick the can down the road is really quite noteworthy, because the case didn't have to be taken to begin with. The justices actually went around the normal appeals process to grab this case from the lower courts, and now have done the exact opposite by kicking it back to the lower courts, which the upshot here is that women in Idaho are going to be able to get emergency abortions, but women in other states have no clarity on the law here. And that's why Justice Jackson is writing a pretty scathing dissent here, saying in part, Hallie, the court had a chance to bring clarity and certainty to this tragic situation. She goes on to add, as long as we refuse to declare what the law requires, pregnant patients in Idaho, Texas, and elsewhere will be paying the price. Now, we talked to doctors today who said, look, this is really cold comfort, because there's still no certainty on whether we're supposed to follow federal law, which says you give someone an emergency abortion, or the ban in Idaho, which says you don't get an abortion unless you are on the verge of death. So that sort of daylight between federal and state law is where doctors and patients are left in the bind.
Laura Jarrett, lots to follow, lots to watch. Thank you very much for that breakdown. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Let's take you out to the Midwest now, where folks are now bracing for a second round of storms set to hit, like right now, as we speak, with people still picking up the pieces after a ton of flooding this week. You've got something like 20 rivers in Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota hitting major flood levels. Look at this. I mean, these are pretty intense scenes for some of those states. And with more rain hitting the region, it's not going to take much for some of these hardest hit rivers to spill over their banks. Take a look at some of the houses in the area flooded out. You've got people trying to save anything they can, trying to get in there, get things out. With similar scenes happening out west, with a strong storm sweeping through Oregon and Idaho, leaving behind a ton of flooding and a whole bunch of power outages. It's all happening as out-of-control wildfires are still burning in Oregon, in California, in New Mexico. Jesse Kirsch, you see the scenes there, is following all of it. He is joining us now. He's made his way to South Dakota and is live for us tonight. So what are you seeing there, and how are folks getting ready for yet more rain? Exactly the thing that they do not want to see.
Yeah, and Hallie, you talked about people going to rescue what they can out of their homes. Some people have not been able to get back into their homes yet, they tell us, and others tell us that there's frankly nothing for them to return to. And you can see behind me one of the structures that is an example of the devastation here. That is what's left of a building crumbling and falling into caved-in grass and mud, which is now part of the area swept away here in North Sioux City, South Dakota, after those floodwaters came through this community. We've been watching the flood levels dropping, including in this community. But as you mentioned, there's the potential for more concerning weather. Right now, we're in a little bit of a lull. We've had on again, off again trickles of rainfall throughout the day. It's mostly just been a drizzle, which is good news. But if you get substantial amounts of rainfall in areas that have already been dealing with flooding, there's concern of further flooding. So that is something that certainly they do not need in this community as they go through this recovery. We spoke with a woman earlier who today got to get a closer look at her home, she says, and her home is in a ditch. Here's part of my conversation with Michelle Lewan.
It's devastating. My house is completely in a sinkhole.
You literally left with what you were wearing.
Literally the clothes on my back
dogs.
and my wallet and cell phone. Yep.
That's it.
That was it. So it's everything. I love my neighbors. I love this area, but I mean, if I'm quite honest, I don't know that where I live will ever be buildable again.
Now, Hallie, as we keep an eye out for weather ahead, something else that we've been looking into here is the emergency response. We've seen video from someone in this community that they shared with us, and the timestamp shows the video having water rushing into a home around 7:41 p.m. The first cell phone alert that authorities say went out to this area came out around 8:21 p.m., about 40 minutes difference. And at that point, there was water gushing into this home. It's not even like there was water on the ground, water gushing into a home, as we saw in that video. We've spoken with multiple people in this community who say they were not getting an alert on their phone as this was all unfolding. We've reached out to officials about this, and so far, they've told us in an email that there was word spread by word of mouth about a voluntary evacuation. But again, those alerts did not go out to phones broadly in this area for quite some time, it seems, Hallie.
Yeah. Jesse Kirsch, lots to watch there. Live for us there in North Sioux City, South Dakota. Jesse, thank you. But also bringing some breaking news into us just a few minutes ago, a bombshell decision in that NFL TV case with an LA jury finding the league violated antitrust laws in distributing some of those out-of-market Sunday afternoon games on the Sunday ticket package. You know, that's the one that you pay like hundreds of dollars to watch all the games, not just the ones that your local network shows. The jury is ordering the league to pay more than $4.7 billion. The NFL says tonight it plans to contest that decision. More on that as we get it. A big question mark coming out of another huge decision from the Supreme Court with a multi-billion-dollar settlement between Purdue Pharma and victims of the opioid epidemic now up in the air. That's because the court basically blew up the deal that would have sent billions of dollars to treatment programs and victims, and that would have shielded the Sackler family from future lawsuits. Remember that family? They're the ones who made a fortune through their company, Purdue, by aggressively marketing OxyContin, the painkiller that fueled the opioid crisis, that led to the deaths of thousands of Americans, like Scott Zabrowski, who died after taking what he believed was OxyContin, but was actually a pill laced with fentanyl. We talked with his twin sister. Listen.
Every single day I've cried. In 7 years, every single day. When I heard what the Supreme Court and what their ruling was, I felt like someone came up and punched me in the stomach. It kind of equated to the day that he died.
Justice Kavanaugh echoing a similar sentiment, writing in a dissent that today's decision is wrong on the law and devastating to the more than 100,000 opioid victims and their families. Danny Savalos is joining us now. Danny, what's interesting here, beyond the makeup of where the justices came down in this case, because it was not along the sort of more traditional, so-called political lines, is this a case where nobody ends up happy? The Sacklers may lose this liability cap. The victims may have to get back into settlement talks here. How do you see it?
Yes, and the takeaway is that this is a case where just because all the parties involved wanted a particular outcome, if it violated the law, the Supreme Court simply couldn't give that relief. That's exactly what happened here. And sometimes the law, as written, yields an outcome that isn't fair to the parties, or at least in their minds isn't fair because it's not what any of them wanted. It's bad for the Sacklers because they had opted into this agreement in order to protect themselves. It's bad for the victims because obviously billions of dollars in their pockets today is a lot better than maybe money in the future and having to go back to the negotiation table, and the possibility that the Sacklers may not feel as protected may lower the amount they're willing to contribute.
Purdue Pharma in a statement says this ruling is, in their words, heart-crushing, but that it does nothing to deter them from their goal of turning the company into an engine for good. Now, the Sackler family has also said they're hopeful about getting to a resolution that works for everybody. I want to play part of a conversation that one of our producers had with an attorney representing thousands of victims in this case about next steps. Listen.
Today, we're grieving, we're upset, we're collecting our thoughts, and we're going to regroup. But I can guarantee you that the victims and I are not going to give up.
So what does this decision mean now, right, for these victims? What are those next steps? What recourse might they have?
Well, the saying goes back to the drawing table. I mean, they're going to have to go back to renegotiate and arrive at a decision among themselves that everyone participates in, that everyone can live with, and that offers the protection that the Sacklers want after settlement, a global resolution, and puts money in the pockets of the victims. It may not be the same amount. Maybe it'll be more. No one knows for sure. But again, the negotiations and the time and the investment is going to be a substantial cost.
Danny Savalos, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Take a look at this now. Former President Trump's plane landing in Atlanta just ahead of the debate here in Atlanta tonight. We're going to have a whole lot more on this coming up a little bit later on in the show. But first, a judge laying out trial plans for the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students nearly 2 years ago, when the defendant and the victims' families may get their day in court. Plus, why are freight train derailments forcing evacuations in a Chicago suburb? More on that in just a sec. Stay with us here live from Atlanta. You've got the State Department tonight saying it's aware of reports of a Chicago woman who disappeared during a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. Officials working now with local authorities to find the woman you see here on your screen, 41-year-old Taylor Casey. Somebody who says they are a spokesperson for the family says they are deeply concerned for her safety because they say she would never disappear like this. According to the family, Casey was last seen last week, June 19th, on Paradise Island. That's where the yoga retreat that Casey was attending was at. They say that the next morning she didn't make it to class. 2 days later, local officials issued a missing persons poster. Sam Brock is joining us now. Sam, what else do we know about this mysterious case?
Sure. So we know it's now, Hallie, been 8 days that Taylor Casey has gone missing. As you said, she arrived there in Nassau on Paradise Island June 19th. And now we are looking at a situation 8 days later where it was reported that she was missing on the 20th. This is the Sivananda Ashram Yoga Retreat. That's where she was at the time. They reported her disappearance to police. There has been roughly an 8-day-long search. The latest that we have in terms of information from police, they uncovered a cell phone, Hallie, in the ocean. But all of her belongings are still back at the retreat. That is in terms of investigatory leads, the latest that we have, but not much else from police there. This, as her family has come out and said that this is someone that went there to try to get certified in particular practices and then bring that certification, bring her expertise back to share it to friends and family and community members in Chicago. So obviously they don't believe that there was any incentive for her to go missing, to go off the grid. They really can't figure out what happened, only that they feel like there was a sense of danger here because it is so anomalous with her personality. And at this hour, we still do not have an update as to where she might be right now.
What is the travel advisory situation for the Bahamas? Because in January, I think it was a level 2 advisory that went out. That is obviously not the highest that it can go to. But do we have any sense from the State Department about that kind of thing?
So the bigger picture on this is that the travel advisories go from 1 through 4 if there's an increased level. For the Bahamas back in January, the State Department issued a level 2, which is exercise increased caution. It was a function of some of the gang violence and firearm violence that was going on the island. Specifically, they said, Hallie, this has generally been gang-on-gang violence. It's elevated the homicide rate. Typically, it is a local population that is affected, but there have been instances of burglaries and armed robberies that have expanded beyond just that population to tourist and non-tourist parts of the islands. But specifically, you wouldn't think someone going on a yoga retreat would necessarily be facing exposure to that sort of criminal activity. So yes, there's elevated risk, but there's no indication to believe what the State Department was worried about is applicable in this particular case of a missing American from Chicago.
Sam Brock, thank you very much for staying on top of this one. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, people in one Chicago suburb now allowed to go back home after a train derailment led to mandatory evacuations. Officials say liquefied gas, not much, but a little bit, leaked from one of the cars, that it's now contained, that there's no threat to the public. Investigators are now looking into what caused this derailment. Number 2, a judge says the trial for the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students will start next June. Remember, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were killed in their off-campus house nearly 2 years ago. Brian Koberger pleaded not guilty. The trial is expected to last about 3 months. Number 3, the Bolivian government arresting a top general in that failed coup attempt we told you about yesterday. Soldiers tried to storm the presidential palace, promising to restore democracy, as they called it, before a new army commander ordered the troops to stand down. That attempted coup lasted like 3 hours. The government says 15 other people have also been arrested so far and that the attorney general is investigating. Number 4, NFL wide receiver Randall Cobb says he and his family are lucky to be alive after a fire at their house in Nashville. His wife says on Instagram it was their Tesla's charger, their family's car charger, that caught fire in the garage and then spread to the rest of the house. You're looking at some of the damage from the Instagram there. Cobb today thanking firefighters and saying he doesn't know if anything from the house will be able to be salvaged. Number 5, Walgreens finalizing plans to close what they say is a significant number of stores that aren't performing up to where they want to see them all across the country. With the CEO of Walgreens telling CNBC that consumers are, in his words, stunned by how much stuff costs these days, and that the closures and some other cost-cutting moves will happen over the next few years. More trouble tonight for Boeing, too, with the airliner now being sanctioned. This is a really rare move by regulators over this Alaska Airlines door plug blowout. The NTSB says Boeing gave out details on the investigation that they shouldn't have, that hadn't been cleared, and speculated about what happened here. All of it coming as the company faces a new whistleblower allegation of trouble on the assembly line, with this person telling the FAA he was fired by a subcontractor after reporting substandard work on the 787. Tom Costello is joining us now. This is a very interesting turn of events, and all of it popped off super early this morning, Tom, as you well know. What is up with this sanction? What is up with the consequences for Boeing now?
Here's what happened. All of us who cover aviation were invited to Boeing headquarters. We had a full-day media tour, very highly choreographed. That was on Tuesday, and we were told we have to embargo it. You cannot report the contents till today. And what it was all about is, what is Boeing's plan to turn things around, to get on their feet and improve that safety and quality control that really has kind of taken a hit? While they were doing a news conference with us, while I was asking questions, the top executive detailed out how that MAX 9 went through the assembly line with a door plug that wasn't bolted in. And she detailed out the fact that somehow that made it through without critical paperwork. We kind of knew that already. That wasn't news. But in the view of the NTSB, that was a flagrant violation of the rules governing an ongoing investigation. Parties to the investigation cannot talk about what their findings are. That's up to the NTSB. So the NTSB early this morning slapped Boeing hard, really in a very rare move, sanctioning Boeing, one of the biggest and most important players in the entire aviation game, and they now are no longer allowed to hear what the investigators have learned about about why this happened, what their own investigation has come up with at the NTSB, and they're not able to question anybody about this investigation. Boeing released a statement, a big mea culpa. This is what they said. They say, "We deeply regret that some of our comments to us, the journalists, intended to make clear our responsibility in the accident and explain the actions, that we overstepped the NTSB's role as the source of investigative information." So that's it. I mean, but by that little tiny misspeak or overstep, they've now been virtually locked out of the investigation. And of course, they are the critical party.
And Tom, it seems like we can't talk enough about Boeing. It seems like you're on almost every day with a new update on something that's going on with Boeing. And now there's this whistleblower, a Spirit Aerosystems subcontractor. What do we know about that and what the company's saying?
Yeah, that's right. So this is a subcontractor. It's not Boeing. A whistleblower has come forward to the FAA and says he is aware of, he believes, substandard construction or fabrication or manufacturing on the 787. Now, listen, Boeing says we looked into it. We don't really see anything. Issues in the forward pressure bulkhead, along with the fuselage. They say one of the primary structures of the aircraft could have devastating consequences. That is what the whistleblower said. Boeing says, listen, we looked into this. We addressed that issue. We think we've solved it already. And Spirit says if anybody has concerns, they can come forward without fear of retribution. But this whistleblower says he was fired for raising those concerns, fired from the subcontractor, not from Boeing. So you're right. We've had a whole bunch of whistleblowers coming forward, some of them with the same attorneys, I'll tell you, coming forward and raising concerns, raising issues. And Boeing says in almost every case, it's looked into these instances. Sometimes it's said, you're right, we need to work on this. We need to fix this. Sometimes Boeing says this is really without merit.
Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you sifting through all of it for us with your expertise and your reporting. Thank you, friend. Good to see you back home in Washington. More tonight to come, including former President Trump now in Atlanta for tonight's debate. This is his plane right here. More on this when we get back, as President Biden is already in town. But first, dramatic new body cam video showing the chaos after a deadly boat crash. The evidence now being shown in court today. Plus, take a look at this video of a huge sinkhole swallowing up part of a soccer field. Watch this. Ready? There it goes. We'll tell you how officials think this crazy disaster happened. Ooh. You are looking right now at former President Trump's plane arriving in Atlanta ahead of tonight's debate. And for the two candidates, both he and President Biden, as President Biden is already in town. You saw some video of him shaking hands with folks just a little bit earlier. The hope, of course, is that voters will listen to their plans for the future, to their political agendas, to their track records. But the reality, tonight's debate may be remembered more for the one or two most TikTok-worthy moments. What makes us say that? Well, decades of precedent. And we're breaking it down for you. Check it out. In presidential debates, plenty of policy.
My plan also says it's going to require a new approach in Washington, D.C.
The touting of track records, the criticizing of competitors. But a lot of times they can be a demonstration of the power of political theater.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Like this one-liner from President Reagan back in 1984 when asked about his age.
You already are the oldest president in history.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Walter Mondale would later say that moment felt like the end of my campaign, in his words. Sometimes an apparent slip of the tongue catches fire, like when President Ford, at the height of the Cold War in 1976, made this baffling claim about the Russians.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
I'm sorry, could I just follow? Did I understand you to say, sir, that
the moment sticking with voters and with Ford, who lost that election to Jimmy Carter, saying years later, there's no question I did not adequately explain what I was thinking. What ends up in the headlines isn't always what the candidates might want.
All the applicants seem to be men. I went to a number of women's groups and said, can you help us find folks? And they brought us whole binders full of women.
Barack Obama taking that on the trail through Election Day. And even without words, body language can say a lot on a debate stage. Just look at the first ever televised debate in 1960. A youthful John F. Kennedy up against Richard Nixon, just out of the hospital after an illness. A visible contrast. In 1992, President Bush was seen checking his watch, the moment becoming infamous, as did a slightly more audible interjection. Al Gore's loud sighing in 2000. Then there's this moment in 2016 when Donald Trump loomed over Hillary Clinton as she answered a question. Clinton, later writing in her memoir, she wished she'd told Mr. Trump, back up, you creep, get away from me. All of it, bringing us to tonight's debate, historic, and if past is precedent...
The radical left, will you shut up, man? Listen, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Its most memorable moments may be unpredictable. And we will have whatever those most memorable moments are right here on NBC News Now for all of your post-debate coverage. We'll see you then. NBC News also covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, the Oklahoma Department of Education is telling public school teachers that they've got to teach the Bible in classrooms. In a memo today, the state superintendent called it an indispensable historical and cultural touchstone. That's a direct quote. This move comes about a week after, remember, Louisiana became the first state to require that public schools display the 10 Commandments on a poster-sized piece of paper in easily readable font in schools. Out of our Midwest Bureau, check out this bizarro moment that this massive sinkhole opened up right in the middle of a soccer field in Illinois. Look at that. Swallows up that light pole right there. Fortunately, you can see nobody was on the field, but man, that's a huge gap, 100 feet wide, 30 feet deep. The local parks director is telling NBC News it was caused by a mine collapsing deep underground. A spokesperson for the company that owns the mine says the whole place is now, you see it from the air there, it's huge, secure, it's off limits. Obviously, fortunately, again, nobody was hurt. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a truck driver crashed a tractor trailer into a house in New Jersey, with local officials saying the driver had some kind of a medical episode, so he lost control. You can see the damage there, pretty severe. Amazingly, nobody inside the house was hurt. Stunning revelations tonight in a Michigan courtroom, and a warning. Some of what you're about to see is graphic. A judge ruling that the 66-year-old woman you're seeing here will face second-degree murder charges, accused of killing 2 young siblings and hurting a dozen others when she allegedly drunkenly plowed her car into a 3-year-old's birthday party. New body camera video from that scene that we're seeing for the first time moments after that crash shows what happens after, according to some brand new key evidence revealed in court. With her blood alcohol content at the time of the crash, according to police, 0.18, more than twice the legal limit. We should note that the court entered a not guilty plea on her behalf back in April. Maggie Vespa has covered this case from the beginning. She is joining us now with more, and that revelation about the blood alcohol level, significant here. Explain that, because the defense is saying she actually wasn't drunk. Help us understand.
Exactly. This is kind of the entire point of this hearing today as to whether or not the second-degree murder charges were appropriate, because her attorneys, her team, arguing that essentially she wasn't drunk when she drove through the child's birthday party. Instead, they said she had a seizure behind the wheel and had no way of controlling what's going on. We'll dive into that. But again, We have that video from inside court today. You're watching this hearing play out. The emotions in that room were so palpable. 66-year-old Marcella Chittister is the name of the defendant. When we first covered this back in April, we didn't even have her name initially, and now we know who this is. And basically, her team saying that she has a history of seizures, and they say despite the blood alcohol content, they say that's what caused this. Their argument, Hallie, is they were kind of parsing whether or not the blood alcohol sample was stored properly, saying, hey, was it refrigerated as soon as possible? And if not, could it have fermented further after being gathered? So that was their theory. Prosecution says absolutely not. They say everything was handled per protocol. But what was key, in addition to that revelation and that video that you're seeing there, was this interview that was recorded with Chittister immediately after the crash, also on body camera. You see police asking her if she remembers what happened. Check this out.
Do you think there's a reason you don't remember? Did something happen, or?
You know what? I have these seizures, and
Okay. Do you have anything where it says, like, maybe that, you know, does your doctor permit you to drive and everything?
I'm clear to drive now.
Oh, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being like you're stone cold sober, you can drive perfectly, 10 being you're passed out drunk, where do you think you're at right now?
7.
So both sides kind of having their arguments supported by that video. First, she talks about her seizures, saying that she has a history of them, but she was cleared to drive, so she's freaked out by that. And then the prosecution pointing to, but you said yourself you're a 7 out of 10 when it comes to being intoxicated. So we'll see that likely play out in court. The judge at the end today, Hallie, agreed that second-degree murder, given all the evidence, was the appropriate charge to move forward on. She is set to be arraigned next month, at which point we expect her to enter a plea on her own behalf. Hallie.
Maggie Vespa, thank you very much for that reporting. We are live in Atlanta tonight with a whole lot more debate coverage coming up. We will be right back. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it is President Biden and former President Trump expected to face off on a whole bunch of issues in tonight's debate, including on foreign policy, with wars in Europe and the Middle East dragging on, tensions with Iran front and center, and now a big election tomorrow in Iran after the former president died in a helicopter crash last month. But the candidates are handpicked by the Supreme Leaders Council. So will votes there actually spur any change? Here's Yasmin Vasugian.
Tomorrow, Iranians will head to the polls to cast their ballots for the next president of their country, after the last president died in a May helicopter crash.
Iran state TV has just announced that the country's president, Ibrahim Raisi, was killed in a helicopter crash.
President Raisi crashed near the Iran-Azerbaijan border in foggy conditions. According to the country's constitution, a new president will be elected within 50 days of Raisi's death.
These elections could prove to be somewhat of a litmus test in terms of where power is going to go next in Iran.
But Iran's elections have never been viewed as either fair or free by the international community. A theocratic country with Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei at the helm. All the candidates are chosen by the Supreme Council, a conservative body whose sole purpose is to uphold the Islamic Republic.
Only a very limited number of regime loyalists are allowed to run for president in Iran.
Only one, Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian, is considered more, quote, moderate.
Pezeshkian is essentially trying to say to people, your problems may be a 10 out of 10 now. If I win, I can try to make them a 9 or an 8. No one is promising very meaningful reform.
Some Iranians have been on a collision course with their country's government since Mahsa Amini, a 21-year-old woman, died while in police custody back in 2022. She was arrested for allegedly not wearing the country's mandatory headscarf to the authorities' liking. In response, protests erupted around the world.
I think that one of the most impressive things about the Women Life Freedom movement is the participation of men. They realize that their freedom is tied to the end of gender apartheid within Iran.
Before former President Raisi died, authorities launched a renewed crackdown on women and men, which police there are calling Noor, or light. Videos surfacing of women being forced into vans and cars being seized, all because of brave Iranians choosing to defy Islamic law and not wear a headscarf, although NBC cannot independently confirm the circumstances of their interactions.
You're living within a society that economically is drowning. It's a broken system. The youth, which is empowered by social media, wants a new life and a new way of being.
While the supreme leader has ultimate power in Iran, he is 85 years old with failing health and no clear successor. So this election may be more consequential than others that have come before it.
So Yaz is joining us now. It is a fascinating look at a critical issue overseas. Help bring it back to what it means for people here in the U.S. and what it means for, U.S. policy, if you will, Yasmin, moving forward.
National security, right? And let's think back to the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear deal. That was negotiated back in 2015 under then President Obama and then a more kind of moderate president at the time in Iran, President Rahimi. We know under former President Donald Trump, he broke away from the JCPOA, saying, in fact, it did not make America safer. It depends on which side of the aisle you are when it comes to Iran's nuclear deal, right? So really the question is who wins tomorrow when Iranians go and cast their ballots for the next president? Is it the more moderate guy who could feasibly come to the table with a possible president here in the United States to renegotiate that nuclear deal, right? Open up economic ties. But remember, we are also in the midst, Hal, right, of this Israel-Hamas war. Who is funding Hamas? Iran is funding Hamas. So we have to keep that in mind as we understand how much this is actually going to affect national security here at home. But again, it's dependent on not only their election, Hal, but the election happening here at home between former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden.
Yasmin Vasugian, thank you very much. Still to come, why some experts say you have a lot that you may need to do if you want to calm down about so-called Swiftinomics. We're getting into the numbers. Don't be mad at us. We're just the messengers. Coming up in just a sec. Taylor Swift is getting ready to bring her massive Eras tour to Dublin, a tour that has smashed a ton of records. I don't have to tell you, 4.5 million tickets sold just last year, more than 150 shows. Look at these stats. $1.4 billion to date. We've been telling you a lot about the phenomenon known as Swiftinomics, right? The idea that she shows up, her fans follow, that city sees a boost. And it's happening, apparently, in places all over the world. You've had leaders in places like Budapest and Chile going on all-out charm offensives just to try to get her to tour there. Now, some economists are pumping the brakes a bit. They're like, well, maybe it's not quite what we thought it actually was. Why? Well, look at Stockholm. Tens of thousands of tourists headed there to see her 3 shows in May, bringing in about $81 million for the city. That's awesome. That's a ton of money for 3 days. But it's kind of a drop in the bucket for Sweden that has a GDP of something like $623 billion. Brian Chung is joining us now. Is this the haters going to hate situation here, Brian, in this instance? The haters are the economic experts, or is this real? What's up?
Yeah, I see what you did there, by the way. Well done. I do think that when it comes to what the it is a lyric, that's a reference to Taylor Swift. But look, the overall story here from The Economist is that, okay, yeah, we've been talking a lot about how Taylor Swift might be driving all of this foreign direct investment into all these countries. And yes, certainly there are a lot of fans spending a lot of big bucks on these tours that are all over the world. But we have to remember that, yes, when you look at these stats, they're pretty impressive, right? $91 in terms of the average ticket price. That's gone up to $122 in 2023. Hundreds of millions of people attending Live Nation shows. And even when you look at just the stats on traveling to these countries, if you take one example being a flight to Madrid, for example, you can see that the ticket prices were indeed up during her travel there during the Memorial Day weekend here in the United States, up 25%, although that is also Memorial Day weekend, I want to point out. So these are staggering statistics. But again, as you point out with the Stockholm example, it's a drop in the bucket compared to these large economies. And just because Americans might be traveling to another country and spending it, if they're spending it at a large corporation, well, guess what, Hallie? Those dollars are getting funneled back into probably some Cayman Islands company and then to some other country. It's not necessarily direct investment into that single country. So at the risk of angering some of these Taylor Swift fans, it's not necessarily Taylor Swift that's driving some of the economic activity in these countries, but it does underscore the broad strength of consumers around the world.
Brian Chung, always good to have you break down the reality check. Thank you, friend. Appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour, but we've got a lot more coverage from here in Atlanta picking up right now. We are are coming on the air live from Atlanta now, where the stage and the spin room is set for what may be the most watched moment of this election season yet. And we've got it covered from every angle. As both President Biden has arrived in Atlanta, former President Trump is on his way here for a key moment set to go face to face, but certainly not eye to eye, with sharp policy differences on the issues Americans care about, like immigration, abortion, the economy. Then, in our breakdown tonight, we're taking a look at some of history's most notable debate night make-or-break viral moments. Also tonight, more bombshell rulings from the Supreme Court after that mistaken abortion posting. The court blocking a ruling against Purdue Pharma that could threaten billions of dollars for victims. Then, a mystery straight out of Hollywood. The Chicago woman now missing from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. And the bad news just keeps coming for Boeing. What the NTSB says they did now, that's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we are coming to you live from Atlanta. This is the spin room, right? This is not where the action happens tonight. That's actually a little bit further away on the debate stage itself. But this is where, after those critical 90 minutes, I'm going to sneak around our friends right here, you are going to see surrogates coming out, trying to convince members of the media, members of the public, why their candidate did a better job, why they're the ones who should end up in the White House. Just to give you a sense of the landscape here, members of the media will be watching from this arena. Up here, narrating, talking, and analyzing these critical moments here, these 90 minutes for President Biden and former President Trump. We're going to walk you up to our set right now, live here, as we go through what we can expect to see. Some really key moments here, and we're thinking about it in a couple of different buckets. First of all, the policy issues and the power of political theater here. Will President Biden bring the energy that many voters feel he lacks and shut down claims he's too old for another term? Which former President Trump might we see? The out-of-the-gate insult-throwing brawler or a more restrained, policy-focused candidate? One of his allies tells me that he may, in fact, try to be more disciplined. President Biden is going to have some tough questions to answer on the two issues we know voters care a lot about: an economy that looks good on paper, but people aren't really feeling great about it, and then, of course, the immigration crisis at the southern border. Former President Trump will also likely be forced to talk abortion, back in the spotlight today following the Supreme Court decision earlier. And how will he respond when his status as a convicted felon is brought up? And maybe most importantly, who will emerge with maybe the clippable, tweetable, Instagrammable moment that could live on through Election Day and beyond? We've got plenty of team coverage here. Vanity Fair special correspondent Brian Stelter is with us, and here with me in Atlanta, our experts on the beats, NBC's Gabe Gutierrez and Vaughn Hilliard, who is joining us as well. So, gentlemen, here we are in the spin room. We are hours away. We know President Biden is here. He did some handshaking, right, Gabe, before he settled in to get ready for what's going to happen at 9 o'clock Eastern. You can watch it right here on NBC. You've also got former President Trump on his way, Vaughn. Talk to us about what you're hearing from sources on strategy and tactics tonight.
Two very different strategies. Number one, for Donald Trump, look, he did this in 2016. He did this in 2020. He did it the more formal way. He had mock debate performances, which he had somebody do a stand-in, in which they went back and forth over questions. This time around, at least his campaign says he's not doing that. Donald Trump himself this week saying that he's been preparing his whole life for this, and he doesn't need to go to a room for 2 days or a week or 2 weeks for this moment. Instead, getting on that plane here today, he's got some top senior advisors, some family members that are with him. It's not clear whether his wife Melania Trump is with him or not, but one senior advisor telling us that he is relaxed and confident. They're having some brush up here before he gets here to Atlanta for this 9 p.m. Eastern debate here. But for Donald Trump, he said that it's all in his head and that he's been preparing for this. I just want to say, though, over the course of the last 4 years, Donald Trump, right, he didn't take part in any of those Republican debates, primary debates. He's only done 2 mainstream TV interviews. So Donald Trump really hasn't had to go toe-to-toe or face many hard questions. Tonight in those 90 minutes, it could be different coming directly from the current president.
And to be clear here, a different style of prep, or whatever you're calling prep, doesn't mean actually no prep at all, right? And we know that President Biden has a more traditional formal structure game.
And look, the Biden campaign, Vaughn, they're skeptical that he had no prep. They say, look, he hasn't had a campaign event since the weekend. Yes, he's called in, to a couple of small campaign events, but they believe that he really has been prepping with his informal advisors. Now, Hallie, you hit the nail right on the head. President Biden has been for several days at Camp David. He's more traditional. He wants to come in here prepared. You mentioned that the video of him shaking hands right there, and that is classic Biden, right? You know, he's speaking with voters here in Atlanta. This was just a couple hours after he landed, and this is the type of retail politicking that President Biden excels at, and his campaign feels that if he does that right before the debate, he could be fired up coming in here really trying to get his message across.
So, Brian, let me bring you into the conversation here, because I'll tell you, the way that I've been thinking about this and talking about this with our team is in a couple of different buckets. And you know I love a bucket, but it's the policy piece of it, right? The actual issues like the economy, immigration, abortion access, the legal issues that Mr. Trump faces, and his felony conviction. But then there is something that is also important in these moments, and that is the power of political theater in so many ways. And the rules tonight are going to make that feel different than we've ever seen a debate go down in modern history. Because not only is this a current president versus a former president, there's no live audience. Mics will be muted unless it's their turn to speak. They're not going to be able to talk to staffers during breaks. Talk us through how that could play into what the audience at home sees with maybe tens of millions of people tuning in.
Yes, that's right. And I think tens of millions of people will be tuning in. The last time that these two men met, 70, 80 million viewers watched. We were in the throes of a horrific pandemic. Now we are out of it, but our politics isn't scrambled by the pandemic, and we're back with these two men back on stage. Because the rules are different, it's going to feel like a very different broadcast. Not having a studio audience will make a big difference. Donald Trump usually performs in front of thousands of people at rallies. He won't be doing that tonight. I've been talking with executives at my former network, CNN. They are very interested in how this microphone situation plays out, because they are going to mute the mics when the candidate's not supposed to be speaking. But we don't know in practice how that's actually going to work. For all we know, Trump might try to interrupt Biden. Biden might be rattled by it. He might try to react to Trump. So even though there are going to be these microphone controls, we don't know how it's going to play out. And with that said, you can mute my mic now, Hallie.
I would never, Brian. It's interesting you say that. I spoke with Cedric Richmond, who, of course, is an advisor of the current president, President Biden, who, and I asked about this mic situation. He's like, hey, they're going to be 8 feet apart from each other. It's not as though Donald Trump may not try to interject if he so chooses, or vice versa. The two of them will be able to hear each other. The question is, how does that feel for somebody who is watching, whether it's you at home or whether it's us here in the spin room?
And there's been an argument today, by the way, between CNN and NBC and the other networks. The White House press corps saying we need to be in the room to hear these interruptions. We need to be able to see and hear it. CNN is saying no, they're not allowing outside journalists. So that's going to be a bit of a sidebar controversy. The point of that, though, is that CNN does not, the producers of this debate, they don't want you to be able to hear the interruptions. They're trying to create a forum where we can have an actual policy conversation. But how much do these candidates want to have that? Do they really want to talk about substance, or do they want to fight and bicker with each other? We're going to find out in a few hours.
What's been interesting in talking to Gabe, and I know you have been, obviously, Biden advisors, they're concerned about the fact check piece of this. They know that President Richmond said to me, you know, Congressman Richmond, you know, Donald Trump, he says, will lie.
That's right.
He's going to lie in every sentence that comes out of his mouth, is what he said. And President Biden is not going to be fact-checking every single line, right? And that's a concern on the Biden side.
You know, Hallie, and that question of live fact-checking, that's going to come up tonight, because earlier in the week, you know, a CNN executive was quoted as saying, oh, it's not really the role of the moderators to live fact-check.
Biden camp didn't like that.
Oh, no. That set off a lot of alarm bells in the Biden camp, and they say that, yes, no, it is the role of the moderators to call out what, you know, lies when they see it. Now, that'll be a major question, as Brian was saying, you know, how this plays out tonight. And with President Biden, yes, live fact-checking his opponent, but that may cut into the message that he's trying to get across. So how much time does he spend fact-checking? How much time does he actually spend talking about what he wants to talk about and the policy proposals?
On the flip side of that coin, I also had an opportunity to speak with Congressman Byron Donalds, who is an ally of former President Trump's. And he did something that may be a little bit risky. He predicted what he thinks Donald Trump will do tonight. I asked him, will he be more disciplined, do you think? And he said he will. And the congressman, who's obviously close to the former president, was on the VP shortlist. We think he's probably fallen off at this point now. We think the top 3 do not include him. Suggested that he believes that the former president understands what this moment is. And we've seen this before. Look back at 2020. That first debate, 100+ interruptions. The second debate, far fewer. Fun.
Donald Trump has vulnerabilities, right? Ever since he left the White House, 4 criminal indictments, Roe v. Wade was overturned. We know that a majority of Americans are for women's reproductive rights. And so, you know, there's a social media post even this morning in which it was almost in a way foreshadowing a potential response from Donald Trump today. In which a pivot. He tried to, like, turn something on its head. He said that, right, Joe Biden is against women. because of immigration and the border, right? Almost is giving a signal of, right, I know I'm going to get attacked over the Dobbs decision and women's reproductive rights. But that's where he's already signaling he's going to try to use that, knowing that he has those vulnerabilities that are on the line tonight.
It's a great point. Also, I tried to sneak a bottle of water off camera. I'm sorry. I got busted. I'm exhausted from the walk through this gigantic spin room and needed to hydrate, Brian. The interesting piece to me here, too, on kind of the optics of it all, is the number of people who will be watching. You predicted tens of millions. That seems right, based on past precedent, based on where history is with some of these numbers. And when you look at the polling here, it's fascinating to me that something like 16% of Americans suggest that they could be persuadable tonight, depending on how these debate performances go. Let's be honest, 16% does not sound like a big number, but this is an election that will not be decided by big numbers, Brian. It could be significant.
Right. We imagine that everybody's made up their minds about Trump and Biden, that everybody made up their minds years ago. I think that's actually not true for the following reason. Trump has faded from the public's memory for several years. He was basically invisible after January 6th. And beyond that, Joe Biden's strategy has been to stay a little bit low-key compared to Trump in his 4 years in office. These candidates have not been in our collective faces, at least not until tonight. A lot of people are going to tune in for the first time tonight. It's going to be a turning point for the election for that reason. And so we are going to see, I think maybe there's a lot more people that are undecided or flexible than we might realize. And that stat about how many people are going to tune in, yes, tens of millions will watch live. Even more people are going to watch the clips later. I know my wife, for example, she's going to wake up in the morning, she's going to watch the best few minutes. That's how a lot of people are going to consume the debate.
She's got to get some sleep.
Well, yes, we got to keep that in mind, that those viral moments, they're going to matter a lot more than they did 4 or 8 years ago.
It's a super interesting point. Brian, thank you. Vaughn, Gabe, before I let you go, what is something that you haven't said on television yet that you think we should be thinking about, that you think folks should know about at home?
How much are folks actually going to hear about the future? This is a moment where both campaigns...
Isn't it all about the future, in theory?
In theory, but 4 years ago is an awful lot about the past, and the roles are reversed this time. And I think Donald Trump is eager to use 4 years of the Biden administration's record to his advantage here, and yet... Again, 4 criminal indictments, the January 6th Capitol attack. Yeah. These two men, that debate happened before, right? The Capitol attack here. And so this is going to be a moment, I think, when we go through those 90 minutes, how much is actually focused on what a second Trump or Biden administration would look like?
Yeah, and for me, look, how much of this is going to be policy? And as you have said earlier today, how much is it going to be theatrics? And a specific question of how personal this gets. There's some part of this campaign that is going to be very personal. Talk about Hunter Biden. What happens if Donald Trump goes out and goes after President Biden's son? But he hasn't really, in some cases, when it comes to his addiction, what if he goes into his foreign business dealings and goes out down that rabbit hole? And is it at that point that President Biden comes back and fact checks? How is it that he thinks about his son there on stage in front of millions of people? So, this could get personal. It should be very interesting to see how those muted mics, how much that kind of focuses this debate really on policy and not so much on the theatrics. And also, I'm interested to see whether they shake hands at the beginning.
Well, that's another big moment, and that'll be like minute 2. We'll know the tone, at least for the first part of the evening. There's nobody I'd rather be watching it with. Vaughn, Gabe, I'll see you like all night long. Thank you for being on. I appreciate it. And obviously, of course, our thanks to Brian Stelter as well. We are going to have all of it tonight. The debate hosted by CNN will be right here on NBC News Now. We're simulcasting it. Our special coverage on the network begins at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Do not miss it. I will see you there. One of the things that we talked about that is going to come up almost certainly in this debate is the issue of abortion access, especially on the heels of that Idaho abortion decision by the Supreme Court and what it means for those who need care. Because here today, you now have the justices officially, essentially punting a case on emergency abortions in Idaho. And if this sounds familiar, if you're having some deja vu, well, that's because right on this show 24 hours ago, we told you about that copy of the decision that was posted online accidentally yesterday. Now, the ruling, again, official today, means that people in Idaho can get an abortion if their health is at serious risk, and that is at least the temporary decision. It doesn't necessarily stop any other state from putting in place a similar ban. And this is partly why Justice Jackson, in her dissent, said today is not a victory for pregnant patients, instead calling it simply a delay. Laura Jarrett is joining us now. Laura, we're glad to have you here because, listen, you have been talking about this particular case ever since it was accidentally posted, that copy, about 24 hours ago. But now here it is, right? It is the reality. It is the law of the land, at least in Idaho. The question is, what does this mean for the rest of the country, and where do we go next?
Yeah, it was one of your producers who actually flagged to me that it had been improperly posted and set off a chain of events, Hallie, funny enough. But the sort of ability to do nothing in this case and to punt on the issue and to kick the can down the road is really quite noteworthy because because the case didn't have to be taken to begin with. The justices actually went around the normal appeals process to grab this case from the lower courts and now have done the exact opposite by kicking it back to the lower courts, which the upshot here is that women in Idaho are going to be able to get emergency abortions, but women in other states have no clarity on the law here. And that's why Justice Jackson is writing a pretty scathing dissent here, saying in part, Hallie, the court had a chance to bring clarity and certainty to this tragic situation. She goes on to add, as long as we refuse to declare what the law requires, pregnant patients in Idaho, Texas, and elsewhere will be paying the price. Now, we talked to doctors today who said, look, this is really cold comfort because there's still no certainty on whether we're supposed to follow federal law, which says you give someone an emergency abortion, or the ban in Idaho, which says you don't get an abortion unless you are on the verge of death. So that sort of daylight between federal and state law is where doctors and patients are left in the bind.
Laura Jarrett, lots to follow, lots to watch. Thank you very much for that breakdown. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Let's take you out to the Midwest now, where folks are now bracing for a second round of storms set to hit, like right now, as we speak, with people still picking up the pieces after a ton of flooding this week. You've got something like 20 rivers in Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota hitting major flood levels. Look at this. I mean, these are pretty intense scenes for some of those states. And with more rain hitting the region, it's not going to take much for some of these hardest hit rivers to spill over their banks. Take a look at some of the houses in the area flooded out. You've got people trying to save anything they can, trying to get in there, get things out. With similar scenes happening out west, with a strong storm sweeping through Oregon and Idaho, leaving behind a ton of flooding and a whole bunch of power outages. It's all happening as out-of-control wildfires are still burning in Oregon, in California, in New Mexico. Jesse Kirsch, you see the scenes there, is following all of it. He is joining us now. He's made his way to South Dakota and is live for us tonight. So what are you seeing there, and how are folks getting ready for yet more rain? Exactly the thing that they do not want to see.
Yeah, and Hallie, you talked about people going to rescue what they can out of their homes. Some people have not been able to get back into their homes yet, they tell us, and others tell us that there's frankly nothing for them to return to. And you can see behind me one of the structures that is an example of the devastation here. That is what's left of a building crumbling and falling into caved-in grass and mud, which is now part of the area swept away here in North Sioux City, South Dakota, after those floodwaters came through this community. We've been watching the flood levels dropping, including in this community. But as you mentioned, there's the potential for more concerning weather. Right now, we're in a little bit of a lull. We've had on again, off again trickles of rainfall throughout the day. It's mostly just been a drizzle, which is good news. But if you get substantial amounts of rainfall in areas that have already been dealing with flooding, there's concern of further flooding. So that is something that certainly they do not need in this community as they go through this recovery. We spoke with a woman earlier who today got to get a closer look at her home, she says, and her home is in a ditch. Here's part of my conversation with Michelle Lewan.
It's devastating. My house is completely in a sinkhole.
You literally left with what you were wearing.
Literally the clothes on my back and my wallet and cell phone. Yep.
That's it.
That was it. So it's everything. I love my neighbors. I love this area, but I mean, if I'm quite honest, I don't know that where I live will ever be buildable again.
Now, Hallie, as we keep an eye out for weather ahead, something else that we've been looking into here is the emergency response. We've seen video from someone in this community that they shared with us, and the timestamp shows the video having water rushing into a home around 7:41 p.m. The first cell phone alert that authorities say went out to this area came out around 8:21 p.m. About 40 minutes difference. And at that point, there was water gushing into this home. It's not even like there was water on the ground, water gushing into a home, as we saw in that video. We've spoken with multiple people in this community who say they were not getting an alert on their phone as this was all unfolding. We've reached out to officials about this, and so far, they've told us in an email that there was word spread by word of mouth about a voluntary evacuation. But again, those alerts did not go out to phones broadly in this area for quite some time, it seems, Hallie.
Yeah. Jesse Kirsch, lots to watch there. Live for us there in North Sioux City, South Dakota. Jesse, thank you. Well, also bringing some breaking news into us just a few minutes ago, a bombshell decision in that NFL TV case with an LA jury finding the league violated antitrust laws in distributing some of those out-of-market Sunday afternoon games on the Sunday ticket package. You know, that's the one that you pay like hundreds of dollars to watch all the games, not just the ones that your local network shows. The jury is ordering the league to pay more than $4.7 billion. The NFL says tonight it plans to contest that decision. More on that as we get it. A big question mark coming out of another huge decision from the Supreme Court with a multi-billion-dollar settlement between Purdue Pharma and victims of the opioid epidemic now up in the air. That's because the court basically blew up the deal that would have sent billions of dollars to treatment programs and victims and that would have shielded the Sackler family from future lawsuits. Remember that family? They're the ones who made a fortune through their company, Purdue, by aggressively marketing OxyContin, the painkiller that fueled the opioid crisis, that led to the deaths of thousands of Americans, like Scott Zabrowski, who died after taking what he believed was OxyContin, but was actually a pill laced with fentanyl. We talked with his twin sister. Listen.
Every single day I've cried. In 7 years, every single day. When I heard what the Supreme Court and what their ruling was, I felt like someone came up and punched me in the stomach. It kind of equated to the day that he died.
Justice Kavanaugh echoing a similar sentiment, writing in a dissent that today's decision is wrong on the law and devastating to the more than 100,000 opioid victims and their families. Danny Savalos is joining us now. Danny, what's interesting here, beyond the makeup of where the justices came down in this case, because it was not along the sort of more traditional, you know, so-called political lines, is this a case where nobody ends up happy? The Sacklers may lose this liability cap. The victims may have to get back into settlement talks here. How do you see it?
Yes, and the takeaway is that this is a case where just because all the parties involved wanted a particular outcome, if it violated the law, the Supreme Court simply couldn't give that relief. That's exactly what happened here. And sometimes the law, as written, yields an outcome that isn't fair to the parties, or at least in their minds isn't fair because it's not what any of them wanted. It's bad for the Sacklers because they had opted into this agreement in order to protect themselves. It's bad for the victims because obviously billions of dollars in their pockets today is a lot better than maybe money in the future and having to go back to the negotiation table, and the possibility that the Sacklers may not feel as protected may lower the amount they're willing to contribute.
Purdue Pharma in a statement says this ruling is, in their words, heart-crushing, but that it does nothing to deter them from their goal of turning the company into an engine for good. Now, the Sackler family has also said they're hopeful about getting to a resolution that works for everybody. I want to play part of a conversation that one of our producers had with an attorney representing thousands of victims in this case about next steps. Listen.
Today, we're grieving, we're upset, we're collecting our thoughts, and we're going to regroup. But I can guarantee you that the victims and I are not going to give up.
So what does this decision mean now, right, for these victims? What are those next steps? What recourse might they have?
Well, the saying goes back to the drawing table. I mean, they're going to have to go back to renegotiate and arrive at a decision among themselves that everyone participates in, that everyone can live with, and that offers the protection that the Sacklers want after settlement, a global resolution, and puts money in the pockets of the victims. It may not be the same amount. Maybe it'll be more. No one knows for sure. But again, the negotiations and the time and the investment is going to be a substantial cost.
Danny Savalos, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Take a look at this now. Former President Trump's plane landing in Atlanta just ahead of the debate here in Atlanta tonight. We're going to have a whole lot more on this coming up a little bit later on in the show. But first, a judge laying out trial plans for the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students nearly 2 years ago, when the defendant and the victims' families may get their day in court. Plus, why are freight train derailments forcing evacuations in a Chicago suburb? More on that in just a sec. Stay with us here live from Atlanta. The State Department tonight saying it's aware of reports of a Chicago woman who disappeared during a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. Officials working now with local authorities to find the woman you see here on your screen, 41-year-old Taylor Casey. Somebody who says they are a spokesperson for the family says they are deeply concerned for her safety because they say she would never disappear like this. According to the family, Casey was last seen last week, June 19th, on Paradise Island. That's where the yoga retreat that Casey was attending was at. They say that the next morning she didn't make it to class. 2 days later, local officials issued a missing persons poster. Sam Brock is joining us now. Sam, what else do we know about this mysterious case?
Sure. So we know it's now, Hallie, been 8 days that Taylor Casey has gone missing. As you said, she arrived there in Nassau on Paradise Island June 19th. And now we're looking at a situation 8 days later where it was reported that she was missing on the 20th. This is the Sivananda Ashram Yoga Retreat. That's where she was at the time. They reported her disappearance to police. There has been roughly an 8-day-long search. The latest that we have in terms of information from police, they uncovered a cell phone, Hallie, in the ocean. But all of her belongings are still back at the retreat. That is in terms of investigatory leads, the latest that we have, but not much else from police there. This, as her family has come out and said that this is someone that went there to try to get certified in particular practices and then bring that certification, bring her expertise back to share it to friends and family and community members in Chicago. So obviously they don't believe that there was any incentive for her to go missing, to go off the grid. They really can't figure out what happened, only that they feel like there was a sense of danger here because it is so anomalous with her personality. And at this hour, we still do not have an update as to where she might be right now.
What is the travel advisory situation for the Bahamas? Because in January, I think it was a level 2 advisory that went out. That is obviously not the highest that it can go to. But do we have any sense from the State Department about that kind of thing?
So the bigger picture on this is that the travel advisories go from 1 through 4 if there's an increased level. For the Bahamas back in January, the State Department issued a level 2, which is exercise increased caution. It was a function of some of the gang violence and firearm violence that was going on the island. Specifically, they said, Hallie, this has generally been gang-on-gang violence. It's elevated the homicide rate. Typically, it is a local population that is affected, but there have been instances of burglaries and armed robberies that have expanded beyond just that population to tourist and non-tourist parts of the islands. But specifically, you wouldn't think someone going on a yoga retreat would necessarily be facing exposure to that sort of criminal activity. So yes, there's elevated risk, but there's no indication to believe what the State Department was worried about is applicable in this particular case of a missing American from Chicago.
Sam Brock, thank you very much for staying on top of this one. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, people in one Chicago suburb now allowed to go back home after a train derailment led to mandatory evacuations. Officials say liquefied gas, not much, but a little bit, leaked from one of the cars, that it's now contained, that there's no threat to the public. Investigators are now looking into what caused this derailment. Number 2, a judge says the trial for the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students will start next June. Remember, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were killed in their off-campus house nearly 2 years ago. Brian Koberger pleaded not guilty. The trial is expected to last about 3 months. Number 3, the Bolivian government arresting a top general in that failed coup attempt we told you about yesterday. Soldiers tried to storm the presidential palace, promising to restore democracy, as they called it, before a new army commander ordered the troops to stand down. That attempted coup lasted like 3 hours. The government says 15 other people have also been arrested so far and that the attorney general is investigating. Number 4, NFL wide receiver Randall Cobb says he and his family are lucky to be alive after a fire at their house in Nashville. His wife says on Instagram it was their Tesla's charger, their family's car charger, that caught fire in the garage and then spread to the rest of the house. You're looking at some of the damage from the Instagram there. Cobb today thanking firefighters and saying he doesn't know if anything from the house will be able to be salvaged. Number 5, Walgreens finalizing plans to close what they say is a significant number of stores that aren't performing up to where they want to see them all across the country. With the CEO of Walgreens telling CNBC that consumers are, in his words, stunned by how much stuff costs these days, and that the closures and some other cost-cutting moves will happen over the next few years. More trouble tonight for Boeing, too, with the airliner now being sanctioned. This is a really rare move by regulators over this Alaska Airlines door plug blowout. The NTSB says Boeing gave out details on the investigation that they shouldn't have, that hadn't been cleared, and speculated about what happened here. All of it coming as the company faces a new whistleblower allegation of trouble on the assembly line, with this person telling the FAA he was fired by a subcontractor after reporting substandard work on the 787. Tom Costello is joining us now. This is a very interesting turn of events, and all of it popped off super early this morning, Tom, as you well know. What is up with this sanction? What is up with the consequences for Boeing now?
Here's what happened. All of us who cover aviation were invited to Boeing headquarters. We had a full-day media tour, very highly choreographed. That was on Tuesday, and we were told we have to embargo it. You cannot report the contents till today. And what it was all about is, what is Boeing's plan to turn things around, to get on their feet and improve that safety and quality control that really has kind of taken a hit. While they were doing a news conference with us, while I was asking questions, the top executive detailed out how that MAX 9 went through the assembly line with a door plug that wasn't bolted in. And she detailed out the fact that somehow that made it through without critical paperwork. We kind of knew that already. That wasn't news. But in the view of the NTSB, that was a flagrant violation of the rules governing an ongoing investigation. Parties to the investigation cannot talk about what their findings are. That's up to the NTSB. So the NTSB early this morning slapped Boeing hard, really in a very rare move, sanctioning Boeing, one of the biggest and most important players in the entire aviation game, and they now are no longer allowed to hear what the investigators have learned about about why this happened, what their own investigation has come up with at the NTSB, and they're not able to question anybody about this investigation. Boeing released a statement, a big mea culpa. This is what they said. They say, we deeply regret that some of our comments to us, the journalists, intended to make clear our responsibility in the accident and explain the actions, that we overstepped the NTSB's role as the source of investigative information. So that's it. I mean, but by that little tiny misspeak or overstep, they've now been virtually locked out of the investigation. And of course, they are the critical party.
And Tom, it seems like we can't talk enough about Boeing. It seems like you're on almost every day with a new update on something that's going on with Boeing. And now there's this whistleblower, a Spirit AeroSystems subcontractor. What do we know about that and what the company's saying?
Yeah, that's right. So this is a subcontractor. It's not Boeing. A whistleblower has come forward to the FAA and says he is aware of, he believes, substandard construction or fabrication or manufacturing on the 787. Now, listen, Boeing says we looked into it. We don't really see anything. Issues in the forward pressure bulkhead, along with the fuselage. They say one of the primary structures of the aircraft could have devastating consequences. That is what the whistleblower said. Boeing says, listen, we looked into this. We addressed that issue. We think we've solved it already. And Spirit says if anybody has concerns, they can come forward without fear of retribution. But this whistleblower says he was fired for raising those concerns, fired from the subcontractor, not from Boeing. So you're right. We've had a whole bunch of whistleblowers coming forward, some of them with the same attorneys, I'll tell you, coming forward and raising concerns, raising issues. And Boeing says in almost every case, it's looked into these instances. Sometimes it's said, you're right, we need to work on this. We need to fix this. Sometimes Boeing says this is really without merit.
Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you sifting through all of it for us with your expertise and your reporting. Thank you, friend. Good to see you back home in Washington. More tonight to come, including former President Trump now in Atlanta for tonight's debate. This is his plane right here. More on this when we get back, as President Biden is already in town. But first, dramatic new body cam video showing the chaos after a deadly boat crash. The evidence now being shown in court today. Plus, take a look at this video of a huge sinkhole swallowing up part of a soccer field. Watch this. Ready? There it goes. We'll tell you how officials think this crazy disaster happened. Ooh. You are looking right now at former President Trump's plane arriving in Atlanta ahead of tonight's debate. And for the two candidates, both he and President Biden, as President Biden is already in town. You saw some video of him shaking hands with folks just a little bit earlier. The hope, of course, is that voters will listen to their plans for the future, to their political agendas, to their track records. But the reality, tonight's debate may be remembered more for the one or two most TikTok-worthy moments. What makes us say that? Well, decades of precedent. And we're breaking it down for you. Check it out. In presidential debates, plenty of policy.
My plan also says it's going to require a new approach in Washington, D.C.
The touting of track records, the criticizing of competitors. But a lot of times they can be a demonstration of the power of political theater.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago.
Like this one-liner from President Reagan back in 1984 when asked about his age.
You already are the oldest president in history. I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Walter Mondale would later say that moment felt like the end of my campaign, in his words. Sometimes an apparent slip of the tongue catches fire, like when President Ford, at the height of the Cold War in 1976, made this baffling claim about the Russians.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
I'm sorry, could I just follow? Did I understand you to say, sir, that the
moment sticking with voters and with Ford, who lost that election to Jimmy Carter, saying years later, there's no question I did not adequately explain what I was thinking. What ends up in the headlines isn't always what the candidates might want.
All the applicants seem to be men. I went to a number of women's groups and said, can you help us find folks? And they brought us whole binders full of women.
Barack Obama taking that on the trail through Election Day. And even without words, body language can say a lot on a debate stage. Just look at the first ever televised debate in 1960. A youthful John F. Kennedy up against Richard Nixon, just out of the hospital after an illness. A visible contrast. In 1992, President Bush was seen checking his watch, the moment becoming infamous, as did a slightly more audible interjection.
Prescription drugs and Social Security.
Al Gore's loud sighing in 2000. Then there's this moment in 2016 when Donald Trump loomed over Hillary Clinton as she answered a question. Clinton, later writing in her memoir, she wished she'd told Mr. Trump, back up, you creep, get away from me. All of it, bringing us to tonight's debate, historic, and if past is precedent...
The radical left, will you shut up, man? Listen, who Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Its most memorable moments may be unpredictable. And we will have whatever those most memorable moments are right here on NBC News Now for all of your post-debate coverage. We'll see you then. NBC News also covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, the Oklahoma Department of Education is telling public school teachers that they've got to teach the Bible in classrooms. In a memo today, the state superintendent called it an indispensable historical and cultural touchstone. That's a direct quote. This move comes about a week after, remember, Louisiana became the first state to require that public schools display the 10 Commandments on a poster-sized piece of paper in easily readable font in schools. Out of our Midwest Bureau, check out this bizarro moment that this massive sinkhole opened up right in the middle of a soccer field in Illinois. Look at that. Swallows up that light pole right there. Fortunately, you can see nobody was on the field, but man, that's a huge gap, 100 feet wide, 30 feet deep. The local parks director is telling NBC News it was caused by a mine collapsing deep underground. A spokesperson for the company that owns the mine says the whole place is now, you see it from the air there, it's huge, secure, it's off limits. Obviously, fortunately, again, nobody was hurt. Out of our Northeast Bureau, a truck driver crashed a tractor trailer into a house in New Jersey, with local officials saying the driver had some kind of a medical episode, so he lost control. You can see the damage there, pretty severe. Amazingly, nobody inside the house was hurt. Stunning revelations tonight in a Michigan courtroom, and a warning. Some of what you're about to see is graphic. A judge ruling that the 66-year-old woman you're seeing here will face second-degree murder charges, accused of killing 2 young siblings and hurting a dozen others when she allegedly drunkenly plowed her car into a 3-year-old's birthday party. New body camera video from that scene that we're seeing for the first time moments after that crash shows what happens after, according to some brand new key evidence revealed in court. With her blood alcohol content at the time of the crash, according to police, 0.18, more than twice the legal limit. We should note that the court entered a not guilty plea on her behalf back in April. Maggie Vespa has covered this case from the beginning. She is joining us now with more. And that revelation about the blood alcohol level, significant here. Explain that, because the defense is saying she actually wasn't drunk. Help us understand.
Exactly. This is kind of the entire point of this hearing today as to whether or not the second-degree murder charges were appropriate, because her attorneys, her team, arguing that essentially she wasn't drunk when she drove through the child's birthday party. Instead, they said she had a seizure behind the wheel and had no way of controlling what's going on. We'll dive into that. But again, we have that video from inside court today. You're watching this hearing play out. The emotions in that room were so palpable. 66-year-old Marcella Chittister is the name of the defendant. When we first covered this back in April, we didn't even have her name initially, and now we know who this is. And basically her team saying that she has a history of seizures, and they say despite the blood alcohol content, they say that's what caused this. Their argument, Hallie, is they were kind of parsing whether or not the blood alcohol sample was stored properly, saying, hey, was it refrigerated as soon as possible? And if not, could it have fermented further after being gathered? So that was their theory. Prosecution says absolutely not. They say everything was handled per protocol. But what was key, in addition to that revelation and that video that you're seeing there, was this interview that was recorded with Chittister immediately after the crash, also on body camera. You see police asking her if she remembers what happened. Check this out.
Do you think there's a reason you don't remember? Did something happen, or?
You know what? I have these seizures, and
Okay. Do you have anything where it says, like, maybe that, you know, or does your doctor permit you to drive and everything?
I'm cleared to drive now.
So, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being like you're stone cold sober, you can drive perfectly, 10 being you're passed out drunk, where do you think you're at right now?
7.
So both sides kind of having their arguments supported by that video. First, she talks about her seizures, saying that she has a history of them, but she was cleared to drive, so she's freaked out by that. And then the prosecution pointing to, but you said yourself you're a 7 out of 10 when it comes to being intoxicated. So we'll see that likely play out in court. The judge at the end today, Hallie, agreed that second-degree murder, given all the evidence, was the appropriate charge to move forward on. She is set to be arraigned next month, at which point we expect her to enter a plea on her own behalf. Hallie.
Maggie Vespa, thank you very much for that reporting. We are live in Atlanta tonight with a whole lot more debate coverage coming up. We will be right back. We are back here live from the Spin Room in Atlanta. I'm coming down the steps, up those steps in this arena. What used to be an arena up until a couple of days ago is where all the members of the media will be watching the debate. And then afterwards, this is where the action is. Come with me because you can already see it starting to fill up here. You've got allies of both candidates coming out, doing some preemptive spin, if you will. Okay, there I spot Congressman Byron Donalds. He is here as a surrogate on behalf of former President Trump. Who else do we see? Oh, look over there. That's Corey Lewandowski, also here for the former president. I spotted Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, just a couple of minutes ago. He's here on behalf, of course, of President Biden, trying to make the case here for the president and against former President Trump in what is going to be perhaps the most critical moment of this election season yet. We know it's probably going to be the most viewed moment of this election season, with polling showing that some 7 in 10 Americans say they're going to watch this tonight. You can see, listen, it's going to be way more packed than this coming up later on tonight with members of the media, with surrogates, with all sorts of folks. Our set, I'm just going to show you. We love like a behind-the-scenes moment here. That's where we're set up there. You're going to be watching my colleague and friend Tom Yamas do his thing in our pre- and post-show there. Our network debate coverage will be coming from here as well, because remember, you can watch all of it here coming up on NBC News Now and on NBC News when this thing begins. 90 minutes, super critical. Speaking of Byron Donalds, my photographer Paul Ring is going to bump into some folks that are gaggling with him over there. That's okay. He told me earlier today that he believes that former President Trump, and remember, he's somebody who is an ally of the former president, will be, in his view, he predicted this, he said he thinks he'll be a little bit more disciplined than we've seen him in the past. Cedric Richmond, on the other side of the aisle, told me that he believes President Biden may, in fact, go at the former president on his felony conviction, on some of these big issues of fitness for office that the Biden campaign has been trying to make the case on. So that's the lay of the land. That's the setup here in Spin. We've got team coverage covering every angle of this. Vaughn Hilliard is outside the room. Chuck Todd is back home in Washington. We've also got Brian Stelter, a special Vanity Fair correspondent, who is with us as well for all things political theater, if you will. Vaughn, my friend, I'm going to start with you. You have made your way outside. We now know that both of these candidates are here in Atlanta. Question is, who are they here with? That's some of the intrigue heading into tonight. Talk us through.
Right. This is the moment. We're 4 months out from the general election, Hallie. And let's be clear, Donald Trump announced this 2024 bid all the way back in November of 2020. 2022. And there were question marks, right? Would he be the nominee, or would there be another Republican? For Joe Biden, it was, right, would the Democratic Party unify around him in an effort to win a second term? The answer to both of those questions is yes. You've got the Joe Biden-Donald Trump rematch, and that is where you see folks like California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is here tonight in Georgia, 4 months out from the general election. I had the chance to just talk to him for a few moments here, a few minutes ago, and I asked him the question, how would he describe the Democratic Party today in the extent to which it is unified or not? And he said, look, he goes, I'm here. There's Senator Raphael Warnock is here. And he said that in his mind that there has been no presidential administration ever that has walked away with more legislative accomplishments than that of the Biden administration. And he said when it comes to the question of age, it's not about one's own age, the candidate's age, but it's about the age and how old somebody's ideas are and the extent to which it's rooted in this country and its 250-year existence. So for Gavin Newsom, somebody who is a rising star within the Democratic Party, it's that type of surrogate that is important. But on the other side, for Donald Trump, he's got a litany of others that include Doug Burgum, J.D. Vance, some of those VP prospects, as well as several members of Congress who are going to be in that spin room on his behalf.
That's right. Somebody else who was here, Vaughn, who you spoke with, I know, is the estranged niece of former President Trump, Mary Trump, who's been deployed here on behalf of the Biden campaign, trying to help make the case against Donald Trump. Chuck Todd, I want to go to you on this dynamic here, because President Biden, both candidates have a lot to prove here, and both candidates are going to be doing it on a super big stage. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, pal, and how you think this plays out, especially considering, Chuck, listen, it's still early days. I mean, it's still June, right? We've got a ways to go before the election in November, and at least one more debate on the books.
Well, and I think that's really important to understand, that there's one more debate on the books. And why do I bring that up? Because, you know, a lot of times we will look at a first debate, a first matchup. A lot of times this happens in primary campaigns, but also general elections. And everybody walks away going, oh, that was a little more polite than I expected. Because a lot of times the candidates realize they're making a first impression. And now I know you're sitting there going, Trump and Biden are making first impressions. Well, there's a lot of
first impression.
Right. What they really are making, though, is a new impression, right? There's a lot of caricatures and stereotypes about both of them that are out there. If you think the country is sort of fragmented, and I'm going to say we're loosely fragmented into 40%, 40%, 20% for political terms. And I think there's 40% of the country out there who support Trump who think Biden is not ambulatory. And there's 40% who support Biden who think Trump is totally unhinged. And then you have the double haters, right, sitting there in the middle. So, look, I think if either one of them it ends up looking like the caricature that's being portrayed of them by their political foes, that's a problem tonight, which is why I think, you know, I actually take Byron Donalds at his word. And I think they're both going to be a bit more risk averse, because think about this, Hallie. 6 weeks ago, I think the Biden campaign was a bit desperate. I think now they feel better about where they are. The Trump folks feel good about where they are. And if you feel good about where you are, you're risk averse in your first debate.
It sounds like what you're saying, Chuck, is that while the stakes are high, both sides have set the bar fairly low, it feels, heading into tonight. Is that fair?
No, 100%. And in that sense, they both have done a good job. I mean, literally, one just has to prove to be nice and not a bully. One has to prove to be cogent, right? Like, talk about low bars.
Yeah. Brian, I want to go to you on this. And while we do, I want to take a walk here with our team, Paul Rigney, Jeff Pope, producer Olympia as well, because I want to show the audience here where, and you know this, Brian, from having covered debates, where members of the media will be watching this from. So we're in this arena that has been turned into this massive spin room. And I want to show you, forgive the back of my head shot. Paul, you don't have to walk up all these stairs. I'm not going to walk up all these stairs because I'm no longer a high school athlete. But it's up circling this arena that members of the media will be watching the debate, tweeting, right, talking about it online, talking about it on TV, writing up their live blogs for the various outlets, Brian. And one of the things that you told me earlier in the hour that I thought was interesting and a good point, the idea that we are now in this sort of TikTok, Instagram, Twitter landscape. We've been for a while now, but more so than 4 years ago or even 8 years ago. It may be some of those viral moments that catch fire. One outlet put it this way, and I thought it was interesting, from a Biden senior advisor, saying, hey, the two vice presidents can debate in 2020, but all anybody remembers is the fly landing on Mike Pence's head. These unpredictable, unscripted mini moments that end up making an impression.
Yes, and this time around, those mini moments may help to counter the narratives that already exist about these candidates. If you search Joe Biden's name on social media, you're going to see lots of clips of him that are taken out of context where he looks like he's lost and doesn't know what he's doing. To see him up there for 90 minutes taking questions and taking fire from Trump may make a very different impression for the tens of millions who are going to watch this. I also love seeing you there, Hallie, and love seeing, let's get back to somewhat politics as normal. There's no normal in the Trump age, but in 2020, in the grips of a pandemic, we did not have these kinds of giant events, these big organized kinds of events. Right. We're going to have normal conventions again this year. We're getting back to politics as sort of the new normal in America, and I think it's kind of great to see.
I got to tell you, and it's funny because we always do these debates and there's always a spin room and you're always like a little bit disconnected from where the action is on the debate stage. But then there's a moment like this. And again, just to point, if you're wondering who the people are behind me, it's obviously Congressman Donald and a bunch of people around him trying to get that shot that I hope we're not photobombing from behind. But these are the moments where some of the spin happens, right? That is part of what these campaigns prepare for intently ahead of a debate moment like this. Partly because of a number that has fascinated me since it came out. And then, Chuck, I'm going to want your take on this number, too, given your expertise in this field. From Quinnipiac, suggesting that about 16% of people say that their minds could be changed by what happens on that debate stage tonight. Not a big number, but this election is not going to be about big numbers. Brian, to you first, and then, Chuck, I want to hear how you see that 16%, if you think that's fair enough.
It's because many people have not paid attention up until now. This matters a lot, and that's why I think Chuck is exactly right. This isn't about first impressions, but it is about new impressions.
Yeah,
look, that actually feels, that's a really honest number, and when you think about it, 16% isn't a lot, as you say, and, if they change their minds, it, might move at a percentage point, but a percentage point could be all the difference between winning or losing those three Midwestern swing states.
Here's one challenge, by the way, Hallie. We were talking about the mics. The mics are going to be muted when the candidates are not supposed to be speaking. Yeah. This was something the Biden campaign apparently wanted. It's a way to try to actually keep the candidates on message and try to avoid Donald Trump from attacking and bemoaning Biden. But I do wonder if there's a world in which that backfires on Biden and on the Biden campaign, because we're going to see Trump in a more controlled setting, perhaps, in a more moderated way. There's been all this talk about whether Biden's going to be using stimulants. The right-wing media is trying to claim that Biden's going to be hyped up on drugs, but we might see two relatively subdued candidates tonight, and that could actually benefit Trump in a way that I think is not baked into the pre-debate calculations.
Not to mention that a hall with a live audience is a very different vibe and feel than a studio with maybe 4 principals plus staff and crew inside of it as well, just bar none, setting aside even the debate setting. We've got about 2 minutes left before the rest of our pre-debate coverage picks up with Tom Yamas, who I think is getting ready. Actually, I think I see Tom there just getting ready, plugging in with our Vaughn Hilliard, a little backstage action as they are prepping for the rest of the pre-show. So Brian and Chuck, let me go to you looking ahead here as to what's next, because Chuck, it is something we often see, candidates trying to take advantage of any kind of momentum they may pick up on the debate stage to go to states that may matter to them. You've got President Biden set to head to North Carolina tonight, former President Trump set to head to Virginia for a rally in Virginia Beach tomorrow. Smart moves for the both of them? What do you think?
Oh, they're expected. And don't forget, next week's a vacation week. So they really only have one day to really sort of revel in this, because the country is going to kind of sort of take the next couple of weeks off.
Well, until July 11th, Brian, when Donald Trump will be sentenced on his felony conviction, when every network is going to be wall-to-wall, depending on what that historic sentence will be. There are going to be more major moments in this campaign to come, Brian.
And that's a reminder about what's so different about this night. We are in an environment where there are anti-democratic forces, mostly on the right now in the United States. There is a demagogue in the representative Donald Trump who is speaking out against immigrants. This is a very, very propulsive, very combustible election season. And even though this might seem normal tonight, we need to keep in mind those forces are with us for some time to come.
Yeah. Brian Stelter, Chuck Todd, we're glad to have both of you with us tonight. Vaughn Hilliard, our thanks to him in absentia. As you saw, he is getting ready for the rest of our pre-show coverage. As we are here taking one last look now around the spin room, it looks like we've actually spotted, oh, there he is, Vivek Ramaswamy over in the corner there, again here as a surrogate for the former president. Much more to come as Tom picks it up in about 5 seconds from right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.